Hello everyone, welcome to FPL Chat Down Under. I'm the Pom, and with me I've got my co-host, Big Alex. How we doing?
What's up, Dan? How you going, mate?
I'm excited because as most people know that we're big AFL fans and know that our team's not very good. So always excited to get my teeth into the round ball game and have a bit of glory.
Oh man, it's always special, and especially us being two United fans. We're expecting big things this season, so it's always exciting.
Expecting big things. And what we're doing is obviously we're going to do a weekly segment of just the fantasy news and what we think is going to go on, good players, and we'll see how our teams get on. So what we're going to do today is we're going to actually look at our first draft and talk about people to watch out for, people we're looking at. So let's look at our team. So we'll start with Alex here, and this is Alex's side. So tell us a bit about your thinking first before we go through the lines.
Well, our goalie I've got started is Sanchez from Brighton. Brighton have got actually some really good fixtures for the first 7 potentially 8 game weeks. And my biggest thing over FPL and my biggest probably downfall, because I'm impatient, has been planning ahead. I get impatient after 1 week, and if they do bad, I just want to sell them. But I think this week I'm taking a really different approach and planning ahead weeks in advance. And I'm seeing which players have got really good fixtures. And I don't think you can go past Sanchez at 4.5. That's one of the cheaper goalkeepers. Brighton, their expected goals, to not concede is unbelievable. And if they get off to a really good start, he's going to be a huge part of that clean sheet potential. You can't go wrong at 4.5, I don't think.
I'd 100% agree with that. Well, I'll merge mine on the screen as well. We've actually gone the same way as well, down back in the goal. We've gone Sanchez and Foster. I'm with you. My thought as well, like to add to the impatience, I also find spending over 5 mil on a goalkeeper very old school mentality. It's very boring, I find. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I find it's boring.
Well, I mean, with 4.5 goalies as well, you've got access to spend around the rest of the field as well. And 4.5 goalies, you consider those guys that are in those teams not really like the top teams like Man United and, City and Liverpool and all that. It's always ones from Brighton or Crystal Palace and so on and so forth. So with those ones, there's always potential, not just for clean sheets, but a lot of save potential as well. So obviously you get extra points for certain, every 3 saves, I think it is, you get 1 point or 2 points or whatever it is. So there's always the save potential there. 4.5, where you can spend the rest of that, 1.5 instead of getting an Allison at 6, you can spend that 1.5 in the midfield and get potential goals and assists as well.
I'm with you, and I think a good way to describe it for like our Australian fans is the kind of like ruckman. If you look historically through the goalkeeper as well, you've got like Martinez last year who scored 26 more than any other goalkeeper. The difference between the price of the real good elite ones, your Edisons, your Allisons, that the price to the lower end, I don't think means a lot. So like obviously you've got your Grundy and your Gorn, you set and forget. I think sometimes it is worthwhile dropping down and getting the points where you know you're going to get it every week. So like you say, your midfielders, you know what you're going to get with your midfielders, your goals and assists. Same with the strikers. So for the sake of 1.5 mil gained, I don't think it's a huge difference.
It is. It's huge, and well, it's not huge, but it's huge in the fact that you can spend it in the other positions where they're likely going to score more points than probably what the goalkeepers will. The goalkeepers are, as you said, just there scoring those points, adding the clean sheets, adding the saves. You're not expecting them to be the top scorers. That's probably the bottom line.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Now, obviously, we've seen, I'd imagine both of us are going to have the same undervalued player. Who's your guy that you're looking at, you think they've made a mistake in the pricing here, this goalkeeper's a lock?
I actually think Martinez is too much. Now, we know Martinez last year was obviously, the highest scorer for the goalkeepers, but he's 5.5 this year. Villa have 3 really good fixtures to start, but after that, it starts to get a bit more difficult. And was Villa's defense last year just a once in a blue moon thing? Because the previous season they weren't really that fantastic, where last season they were obviously a lot better. So there's just a trust factor for me that I'm like, do I want to spend 5.5 on that, where I can go 4.5 on a Sanchez and use that extra 1 point elsewhere, where there's probably almost a similar amount of clean sheet ability in Sanchez as there is with Martinez. So that's my feeling. I don't know what you're feeling, but I think Martinez is the one that could have been maybe even just 5 this season.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, I thought as well when I looked at it, Martinez was a guy that I considered. I just find it hard to believe that he's going to replicate it. Yep. So I think with the price increase, I think it's a risk. And the guy that I've actually got in my overpriced category, and I've seen a lot of people get him, is Mendy at Chelsea as well. I've seen that in a lot of the fantasy sides at the moment, that people have gone with the Mendy. I think at 6 million, I think that is a huge avoid for me. Yeah. He doesn't make enough saves. He's not a high save type goalkeeper, so you're not going to get that benefit. I look at Chelsea's defence, and I can't see much clean sheet potential either coming for him. I think the way that Chelsea play, it always is good for a late goal.
And well, I mean, the thing that you look at with Chelsea is last season when Tuchel come in, they were actually a lot better defensively. But I mean, you look at that beforehand, they weren't particularly fantastic. So it's a real give or take thing. It's a real thing. You just got to assess yourself. And do you want to make that decision? Do you want to spend 6 on a goalkeeper, especially from a Chelsea? I don't know. I'll go cheaper.
Yeah. So value. Which goalkeeper do you think presents a real good bit of value? So who's going to be the Martinez, you think, this year?
Well, obviously a lot of people are picking Sanchez, but I think there's real value in Guaita from Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace aren't a big name team. There's always a lot of potential there to concede goals. But Guaita last season scored 124 points playing on a really poor Crystal Palace team, because his ability to make saves is unbelievable. He almost single-handedly kept Crystal Palace in a lot of games last season, and his save potential at 4.5, once Crystal Palace start to get some good fixtures, I think he could be someone to seriously consider.
Oh, 100%. I can't agree with that anymore. I think that he's a value. I think I think Sanchez for 4.5 presents great value as well. Like, that's why he's in my team, obviously, and he's in your team. I think 4.5. I think that is solid. I mean, it's interesting that the most selected goalkeeper this year is Martinez again. So a lot of people have fallen into that trap. Ben Foster as well. I think 4 million. He's got Bachmann for competition. I think he is Premiership proven and a very good backup as well for 4 mil.
Well, there's been some rumours that Bachmann could be on the move. I think there's some other clubs actually potentially looking at Bachmann. So if Bachmann does go, Foster's the number 1 goalie there, and at 4.0, I mean, that's the cheapest you can get at goalie. That's hard to pass up too. So I think that's why a lot of people have got Ben Foster in there too, because I think obviously he's a nice backup if Bachmann's not going too well, if he does stay at Watford. But even if he's on the move, their next best is Foster. So I think it's a good bet to put him in there.
No, I love it. Now we'll go to the back line, the defence. There's Alex's team. So how many are you thinking there? Like, obviously you've gone for a strong back line. I've gone Luca Dean from Everton. Again, very, very similar to Brighton. Everton have really, really good fixtures to start the season. Luca Dean is an attacking threat as much as a clean sheet potential as well. He's always good for an assist or two a game. Might chime in with a goal every now and then, but his assist potential, how good the fixtures are. There's the clean sheets, there's the assists. I don't, at 5.5, it's not like he's a 7.5 like an Alexander Arnold, which I'll get to later. But it's a nice starting point. And then obviously, next up, we've got Luke Shaw. I think Man United, same thing. Really, really good fixtures to start the season. Loads of potential for clean sheets, loads of potential for assists. He loves beaming down that left back. He loves beaming down that left flank, I should say. Sorry. He's always good for an assist, potentially even a goal as well, like Luca Dean.
I just think it's at 5.5. I feel like that's a bargain at 5.5 for Luke Shaw. He has serious potential to go and score big this season. In my other spot, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Liverpool. Again, as I said, I'm planning ahead. I'm planning for weeks in advance, and Liverpool have another great set of fixtures. Trent Alexander-Arnold is always around the top, if not the top scoring defender most times than not lately. He's got assist potential. He takes set pieces. He could be good for a goal as well. And I think with Liverpool's fixtures, I think you'd be mad not to go with a Liverpool defender. In my other spot, I've got Ben White. Now, it's got him listed as that he's on at Brighton at the moment, but a fee's been agreed with Brighton and for 50 mil, and he'll be going to Arsenal. And I think with Arsenal's fixtures, obviously they have a really, really good first fixture. They've got a couple of tough ones coming up in City and I think it's Chelsea, if I'm not mistaken. After that, their fixtures for the next 8 weeks or so are really, really good, and there's loads of potential for clean sheets there. So he's at 4.5. Again, now that he's going to Arsenal, Arsenal surprisingly were the third best defensive team in the EPL last season. So there's potential there for clean sheets. There's a lot of potential there. So I think at 4.5 that could be a real bargain. And then obviously with my last pick, I've got Fofana from Leicester. Like all the other teams I've said, Leicester have some pretty decent fixtures to start. Fofana's pretty nailed on. There's clean sheet potential. And I think if you just want an easy avenue to get into Leicester's defence rather than going at Castagna or Pereira, you go for Fofana at 4.5 because he's pretty nailed on.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think you've surmised it really well. What I've gone, I always go a bit aggressive with my backline. So we can see here that I've gone Tierney. My starting four is Tierney, Robertson, Diaz, and Shaw. So you can see I've gone with a little bit of a different version to you. You've gone the big Trent Alexander-Arnold. I've gone Robertson. I think for me, when I look at it, I always think Robertson's got just a little bit more reliability. I think Trent, if he's not scoring and assisting, I think just that 0.5 you save with Robertson is worth it. I like Diaz. I think Diaz is, I always think that the Man City backline and the way they play, it's very prudent. And that leads me on to the one to watch. And my value is I've got Ait-Nouri from Wolves. I think 4.5. He's a guy that I was going to wait on. And he probably is also my one to watch. But I think at 4.5, I think the value and I think that the way that Wolves play, I think is a really, really important avenue. And I think it's something that I'm looking at. And I think he's real good value at 4.5. He's got very good job security there.
Yeah. And well, I mean, Wolves obviously with a new coach now as well. He looks pretty nailed on at that left wing back position. And, it's one of those situations where I don't think Wolves have the best fixtures for the first 3, but then after that, they get super, super good. And there's loads of potential there. So, no, I like that pick.
What about your bargain buy? Who are you looking at as your bargain there?
My bargain, well, I honestly think my bargain is who I've picked up already, and that's Ben White. He's going to Arsenal. He's going to a really good defence. Well, not a really good defence, but a defence that has showed from last season it's solid enough. And I think at 4.5, an easy access in there, I don't think you can go wrong, especially with the fixtures that they have. They've got really, really good fixtures and loads of potential there to score big. So I think at 4.5, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, and we'll talk about like the overpriced ones. So, I mean, I've picked here, and this is a guy that has a lot of teams have got him in, is Cancelo at Man City. I think for his price, when you look, he's only averaging around the 5-point mark. But you're looking at the way they're playing recently, Zinchenko and Walker have really been preferred. So I think for the fact that you can't trust he's going to get a lot of game time, I think he's one that I would be avoiding.
That's exactly who I was going to say too. I'm with you there. I think Cancelo is not way overpriced, obviously, because when he does play, he provides really good attacking returns. But the rotation at Manchester City and what Pep's going to do week in and week out, you just don't know. And I think it's 6 mil. that's way too much to spend on a defender that you don't know is going to be nailed on week in and week out, where you'd rather probably spend that 6 mil on a Diaz. Probably doesn't have, the same attacking potential, like getting assists and so on and so forth. But at least Diaz is going to play week in and week out. So he's probably the safer pick. So yeah, I'm with you on Cancelo.
And what about ones to watch? The guy I'm resting on at the moment, even though we've just slated City and their rotation policy, I've actually got Zinchenko there. He's a guy that I really think has a high ceiling, and I think he's a top player, and he reminds me a lot of Luke Shaw. And we saw Luke Shaw's scoring potential towards the end of the year. He's someone that I think can really suit City's style of play.
Yeah. Well, the one that I've got on notice is another City player, but not a wing back. Is their other centre back, Laporte. I think Laporte at 5.5. He had a pretty decent Euros with Spain. And again, if John Stones, if he is the number one at the moment, if John Stones get injured, which he's had a tendency to over the years, I think Laporte's strong just slots in there really nicely. And at 5.5, if you want to, again, like Zinchenko, an easy access into that City defense, Laporte could be one that gets the nod more times than not, especially if Stones is out. So that's my value pick.
I like that one. Now let's go into where really this game is won or lost. So you've got a very interesting midfield. It's one that has got a few, I would say, surprises for some people. So talk us through it.
Well, obviously the first two, I feel like a lot of people will have the first two, Bruno and Salah. Bruno, again, he's the man at Manchester United. He was the highest point scorer in the FPL last season. It's always goal, always assist potential. Man United are looking to be a bit more attacking this year as well. And I think with Bruno at the helm, I just don't think you can go wrong. I know he's quite expensive, but I mean, for a player of that ability that pops up more times than not, he's on penalties as well, I should mention as well. So there's always a potential there for goals. And we know Man United are one of those teams that tends to get a lot more penalties than not. So I think with Bruno there on penalties, you can't go wrong there. With Salah,
with you,
yeah. I think with Salah, Liverpool, as I said before, with Alexander-Arnold, they've got really good fixtures. So there's loads of potential for attacking returns for Salah. He's always around the top. He's always one of the top scorers each year since he's actually come into the Premier League with Liverpool. And I think even though he's 12, it's something that you just can't miss. I think you're destroying yourself and your team if you don't have a Salah or a Bruno in your team. And then I've gone a bit different with a couple other picks. So I've gone Maddison from Leicester. Maddison is an interesting pick because there's potential there for injury. He's had injuries in his past, but when he does play, and he's the playmaker. He's the one that sets up Leicester's attacks. He's always good for an assist. He takes set pieces, so he could be good for a goal there as well. And I think he's the key in Leicester's attack. So at 7.0, I actually think that's a fair bit of a bargain for James Maddison. He could be, given Leicester's good run of early fixtures, there could be potential for returns there. So I think he's a pretty good pick. At my next one is Myla Sarr from Watford. Watford have obviously just come back up from the Championship, but when Sarr was there, they were in the Premier League as well. So Sarr's got Premier League experience there. He had 13 goals and four assists last season in the Championship, but most of those goals and assists come in when their new coach Munoz come in. And I think, him beaming down the wing as he does, he took the most shots. He got the best returns for Watford as well. I think Watford have a really interesting set of fixtures as well. It's not fantastic, but it's not the worst fixtures ever. And I think if you want an easy access as a value pick into Watford, you pick Ismaila Sarr, and then I've got Gilmour from Norwich, who's on loan from Chelsea. We saw the Euros that he had. He had a really good Euros for Scotland. There's attacking returns there. Norwich, obviously, they've got a really tough start to the season, but Gilmour was brought in to be almost a replacement for Buendia. So there's potential for returns there. And at 4.5, I mean, it's not like he's going to play for me every week. He's mainly just there as a bench player to just sit there, and if players get injured, he comes on. But it'll be a handy person to come on if someone does miss, and there's potentials for attack there, potential for returns there, I should say. So that's my midfield.
I love it, and you've gone 4-4-2. So for Poms out there, that's important. We love a 4-4-2. This year, to betray my country of birth, I've actually gone with the 4-3-3. So my three across the middle starting will be Grealish. Now, this is a difference to you. I'm a huge fan of Grealish. Watching the potential transfer talk with intrigue as well. But for me, I think he's the best technical player. This is a huge call in England. I think he is the best player on the ball in England. He would be easily top 5 in Europe for me. And I think he's a defence unlocker. And I think you're looking at scoring potential. He's going to play every game available for Aston Villa. And he's creative and he's their go-to man. So I think for 8 million as well, he presents a huge value for money because I think he does what everyone else does. Fernandez, you can't argue, like you say, Penandez, as he's called colloquially. Penalties, free kicks, assists, goals. He's the main man, isn't he, at United? And you know you're going to get returns. So he's a lot of money, but he's, to use another AFL term, he's the McRae, isn't he? Like, yeah, every week he's going to get your max potential and you don't have to worry. Now, I know you went with Salah. I've got a sneaky feeling that Liverpool just aren't going to be as good. And I've taken a risk here, and it's one that probably I'm not comfortable doing, but I've gone Sterling. And that's just the form he's been in the Euros. And he predominantly plays a lot for City as well. He's one of Pep's boys. He doesn't really suffer from that rotation so much. So he is someone that I'm looking at. And I just think he's got something. He probably won't be there, though, come game day 1. But at the moment in the draft, he is locked in. It might be the Euros form. And then I went like you. I went Gilmore. And I went Smith Rowe at Arsenal. I think Arteta's bringing a more rotation in. And I think watching his preseason games, he's been really tasty and caught the eye. So he's someone that I'm looking at as scope. And I think, for me, that would also, I know that SAR's your value pick. I think that's a value pick there as well. I think that's a value pick because I think he's going to get game time and I think he's going to score. And I think in an Arsenal side, looking at how Arteta's playing, I think there's a lot of goals coming from that wide positions for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, my other value pick at 6.0 is and he's probably the one I'm going to put for one to watch as well. Well, I've got another one for one to watch as well, but here's another one, is Harrison from Leeds. Now, Leeds are an interesting team because we know how Bielsa likes to play. They are a running team. They are just all out attack. Doesn't matter who they play against, and there's almost no F's given. And Harrison last season off that left wing, he scored 160 points. And that's as a midfielder too, not like a Dallas who scored just a few points more, but he played in defense last season. So there was that potential for clean sheets and so on and so forth. But Harrison, he come in, I think he had 8 goals and 10 assists for Leeds last season. And that's huge. And look, they've got a tough first fixture in Man United. They've got a couple of tough fixtures in their first 3. But I think once their fixtures start to turn nice, I think at 6.0, he could be a real value pick and someone to really look at, because I know a lot of people are going Rafinha from Leeds if they are to pick one, but I think for 0.5 less, you could almost get the exact same returns for Harrison. So I think he's someone that a lot of people should be looking at.
I 100% agree. I think Leeds are going to be that interesting case as well. Like, I think the whole Leeds side is a one to watch. Can Bielsa replicate what he did last year? It was a great game style to watch. We have to admit, like you say, no F's given. It is all or nothing, isn't it, with Leeds? It'll be interesting to see if they can replicate that in that second year, because the second year is so important in the Premier League. It's tough to do. Teams start to find you out. So I think Harrison's great value, though, at his price. My one and wait and see was actually Zaha. I think 7 million is cheap. And watching Vieira and looking at through his career, He loves these type of players. He loves these type of players. And he is going to single him out in their attacking third. So I think Zaha, for me, is one of the best players in the league. I think he's a very underrated footballer. And I think Vieira could get the best out of him. I think Hodgson's game style got a lot of points for Zaha, but I think Vieira, he really likes them channels. He likes a player that cuts back inside. And Zaha fits the bill. So I can see him being in and amongst high-scoring games. I think anything good from Palace will go through this man. So he's one that I'm going to have a wait and see on. He may even replace Sterling based on a couple more pre-season games.
I mean, if you can replace, if Zaha starts really well and you can replace those 4 points and use it either in defence or up forward, you're going all right. I would say so. There's another notable that I want to mention that I'm waiting to look at, and he's obviously been the big money man signing this summer for Manchester United, and that's Sancho. At 9.5, it's a fair bit of a price to start, but I think if he comes out in the first 2 or 3 game weeks and has assists, has even goals mentioned in there as well, I think a lot of people are going to be jumping on pretty quickly onto Sancho. And I've had a little play around with Sancho and putting him with Bruno and Salah. And at the moment, I don't have him in there, but I mean, before game week 1, who knows? It's a couple of weeks away, so I could change my team again and find a way to put Sancho in there. But I think at the moment I'm leaning more towards I'm just going to wait and see the first couple of game weeks, see how he goes. And if he starts performing really well, I'll make that move to get him in.
I agree. It'd be interesting to see what position they're going to dedicate him to. We have seen historically sometimes the FPL throws some crazy ones out. We know like Rashford, a midfielder this year. Very similar type of player to Rashford of where he plays. He's kind of a forward, but is he a midfielder? I agree with you. I think he could be, especially with them assists, with the goals as well. He does pop up and score a goal.
Sancho last season for Dortmund, he had 8 goals, but he had 11 assists as well. Now, those 11 assists, if you're looking at it from the top 10 leagues in Europe, those 11 assists, he was top 10 in all of those top 10 European leagues. So he's got potential to go big. And I think you could argue, obviously he had Haaland at Dortmund, but you could argue he probably has a better attack in Manchester United going forward. So I think there's even more potential for returns there for Sancho. So if he starts getting going early, I think you're going to find he's going to be very well owned very quickly.
Spot on as well. And I think another thing to think about Sancho as well is if you look at his stats, he's very similar to Rashford. He's very similar as well to Mahrez, but he's got the added benefit of Sancho is going to play nearly 90% of the games. Where Mahrez, again, another guy that I reckon they'll be about the same price, 9.5. I reckon that's where Sancho will come in as. I think you're going to see him pretty much every game. United don't really suffer that heavy rotation that Pep does. Pep likes to jettison his team every couple of weeks. So I think that's a great one. Now, we talked about value. Let's go to guys to avoid. So I've got a controversial one here. I'm saying the guy that I'm avoiding is Mane.
Mane? Why Mane?
I think that's going to upset people. But looking at him last year, and you look at his price, he's 0.5 less than Mohamed Salah in price, but he only averaged 5.5 a start, and that is made up predominantly in his last 12 games. It really increased his average. He really did suffer at the start of the year when they were going so well, Liverpool. And I think he's, to use a horrible phrase, he's a downhill skier for me on his price. I think when Liverpool were going well, he looks good. But I think for 0.5 less, you can get Salah, who he's taking the penalties, is the prized asset of Liverpool. I think he's just way overpriced. And he's a guy that I don't think presents any form of value apart from he's a part of a really good champ. Yeah.
He scored the 176 points last season, but he just didn't look like his normal self. We're used to seeing Mane as that, that really quick, nifty character that's good for almost a goal a game. It's good for an assist a game as well. And yeah, we just didn't see that last year. So I am with you to an extent on Mane at 12.0. I think that's a fair bit overpriced for sure. My one that I'm avoiding is actually Phil Foden. Now that could be controversial as well. He's only 8.0, so it's not like it's a huge, investment, but he's almost owned in 12% of teams already. And I just think that, like the defenders at City, the attackers are very rotation prone as well. They've got Mahrez, they've got Bernardo Silva, they've got Ferran Torres. Obviously, you've got De Bruyne there as well, mixed with Sterling as well. I think there's just too much worry there that Foden's not going to play week in and week out. And why would you have a guy that's 8.0 in your midfield that's sitting on the bench where you could get someone like a Grealish who, if he stays at Villa, is going to play week in, week out. He's always good for attacking returns. You could even go, 1 mil less like me and go a Maddison who, barring injury, is going to be pretty nailed on week in and week out. So yeah, I'm interested that 12% of people do have Foden in their team, and that's someone I'm avoiding in midfield. That's for sure.
No,
I know he's a good player. I do, and we saw that in his first Euro game, in England's first game. We saw exactly what he can do, but I just think the rotation risk there is City. It's just way too high, and it's just someone that I wouldn't be going for.
No, I'm with you. I think he's going to be a player as well that suffers. And it's controversial me saying this because I've picked players on the back of Euro form with Sterling at City. I think as well the European hype, the Euros hype, is going to overvalue players mentally like Foden, who you like him. Like I've got Grealish in there because I like him as well. It's hard sometimes. You've got to outweigh the risk because I think your midfielders, anything over 7.5 million, if you're paying it, they have to play. They have to play. I don't think you can rest on these players. And yeah, like you say, Foden, it was 60% of games played from the start. And you look at his scoring as a sub, it's horrific compared to when he starts. So you can't really look at him as an impact player, really. Like Mahrez, impact, he had a high impact when he came off the bench. Foden, genuinely, if he's not in the game, he's not in the game at all. So I think that's a great call as well.
Yep.
So let's look at where the business. Oh, sorry.
It's the same with Mahrez as well. Mahrez is another one I potentially might avoid because although again we know he's great with his attacking returns, that rotation risk it's too risky, especially in a game like FPL where you're so reliant on especially your midfielders. Your midfielders are arguably your most important part of your field, and they score most of the points. So if you're going to spend big, you want someone that's nailed on week in and week out.
Spot on. And probably the most fun line, I think the forward line, I think this is where people have the most fun. Like me personally, because basically we're looking at goals here, aren't we? And that's what the game's about. We're looking at a guy that we think is going to go off. Now, talk us through your forwards. You've gone with 2 starting, 1 on the pine. Tell us about them.
That my plan is to eventually turn that into a 3-4-3, but at this point in time, just for game week 1, it's sitting at a 4-4-2. My 3 strikers, I've got Calvert-Lewin from Everton, and again, it's almost the same reason. I feel like I'm like a broken record saying the same thing over and over again, but I think Everton's fixtures are just too good to pass up on a guy like Calvert-Lewin. He had an unbelievable start to the season last year. I think he had 16 goals last season, and most of them actually come in the first half of the season. And I think he was in the Euro squad for England, but he didn't even feature, I don't think. So I think he's coming back, he's raring to go, and I think he's going to play game week 1. And with Everton's fixtures, his potential for returns in goals, I don't think you can pass Calvert-Lewin up at 8.0. You could go 7.5 to a Richarlison, but Richarlison's at the Olympics at the moment, and you wouldn't think he's going to be right for the first game. So I think Calvert-Lewin, if you're looking to get into Everton's attack, is the way to go. I've got Ollie Watkins as my other striker. Again, last season, he was unbelievable, especially in his first season in the Premier League. He was always good for a goal. He just made those blistering runs out the back. And, he's got some pace. He's got some skill. He's a really exciting player. And Villa, like I said, have got 3 great fixtures to start the season. And if he catches fire very early on, he he could be a very, very good striker. He's already in 35% of fantasy Premier League teams. And I think it's those 3 really good fixtures to start the season are the reason why. My plan is I'm going to keep Watkins, see what happens in those first 3 game weeks. If he's not really firing that much, there's another striker who will get to that point if it does happen that I've got in mind that could be some nice value as well. And my last striker is Ivan Toney from Brentford. Now, Ivan Toney, obviously, Brentford like Watford have come up from the Championship, but Ivan Toney last season, 31 goals and 10 assists in the Championship. I know the Championship is a very different level to the Premier League, but any guy that can score 31 goals and have 10 assists in one season, that is just unbelievable. And I think at 6.5, I think it's a risk you got to take because he's the main talisman. He's the man for it. Maybe not so much assists every time, but he's the man they look to for goals. He's always a threat. He looks like such a baller as well. I didn't see much of Brentford in the Championship, but he looks like such a baller. And anytime someone looks like a baller, I love it. So Ivan Toney is my man there as well.
You see, on my bench, I've gone Ivan Toney as well. Like, to back you up on that, I think he's an absolute mercurial talent. Rangers were linked with him last year before he went to Brentford, and he's got Vardy vibes in the terms of he might be some guy that people have overlooked that now he's on the big stage may go off because he's got the game, good finisher, strong, and we always do see one of these promoted sides, a striker invariably start hot. So I agree with you. I think for the price as well, I think you're mad not to have him because at the price, there's no one on that list that's close to his scoring potential.
I think with Tony's got real Bamford vibes from last season. And I think one thing I should mention as well is from what I've read and things that I've seen, Toney is the one that takes the penalties as well for Brentford. So if Brentford do get a penalty, he's more likely going to be on the field more times than not. He's good for a penalty as well. So it's always a handy addition as well.
No, I agree with you. And then I went with my starting 2. I've gone Calvert-Lewin. I'm with you. I think, especially the way Benitez plays, he likes it. He gets a lot of opportunities for his strikers. And I think he's going to really bear the brunt of leading that line as well. I think he's going to be their talisman. So I think he's a great chance. He's a very mercurial talent as well. I think early weeks as well, like you say, you've got his strike partners off in Tokyo at the moment. So I think he's going to really benefit from that. And I think he's going to be another year where he goes strength for strength. I think he's Harry Kane elect, isn't he, for the England team? And I expect to see him put some real pressure on Harry Kane in the next 2 years. And I think Benitez is a great manager as well. Great manager for if you're a young, hungry striker. He plays a positive brand. So I expect to see him a beneficiary of that. I went a bit different to you with my other guy, 7.5, Inioccio here at Leicester. Now, I know a lot of people always look at his strike partner, Vardy, but you look at the back end of the year, he was one of the highest scoring forwards. And I think he'll continue that. I think he's an absolute brilliant talent. I think he's the guy that often gets forgotten about as well at Leicester. He's a great finisher. He looks to provide as well. And I think for 7.5, he's going to play just about every game for Leicester. And I think Leicester are a high-scoring side with Rodgers as well. They play a real positive brand. And I think it's real good value. I think it's dirty value almost. It's that good. So he's definitely someone that he's in now because I think he's going to play well. So he's someone that I think is real good potential. Iheanacho is definitely a good pick. My only worry with Iheanacho at the same time too is they made the signing of Patson Daka. Now, Daka come from... Oh, where did he come from? I know he come elsewhere, but he was playing Champions League football. They've signed him as potential Vardy replacement. And I'm just wondering, obviously they're going to probably play Vardy. It's not like they're just going to bench him out of nowhere. Does Patson Daka come in and replace Iheanacho, or are them two going to be on a rotation basis where one might play for a couple of weeks, the next one might play for a couple of weeks? I think it's going to be very form dependent. So I think very early on, that risk for me is just probably someone I
probably might not go near. But if he does get nailed on, Iheanacho and plays week in and week out, we see the finish capabilities and just how much of a smooth mover he is up front. If he plays, that's mere bargain for 7.5.
I took the risk. Now, your ones to watch, who are you keeping an eye on?
I'm keeping an eye on, again, another 7.5 guy, Raul Jimenez from Wolves. Now, I think he could be now, obviously, we know last year he had that head injury very early on in the season and never made a return after that, which was a shame because we know how good Raul Jimenez is. I think because of that, he's been put underpriced at 7.5. And I think if Wolves get off to a really good start, particularly under their new coach, and get a lot of attacking returns, Raul Jimenez is going to be the center of that. And I think if he gets on a bit of a roll early on, he could be someone I look to go to as well. I think another value pick, if you're looking elsewhere, could be Danny Welbeck at 6.0. Now, Welbeck's obviously signed back at Brighton again, and we know how good Brighton, well, I explained how good Brighton's fixtures were very early on in the season. And I think if they can get off to a good start, and, they're no slouches. They've got some nice attacking players. They've got Malpay. They've got, Leandro Trossard, who's really nice as well. Obviously, they've got Tariq Lamptey coming in from right back as well. If he gets really good delivery and he looks pretty nailed on, which he does, Welbeck could be a sneaky good pick at striker as well. So he's definitely someone I'm looking at as well.
Well, he's got Premier League experience, hasn't he? So, I mean, Welbeck, what you see is kind of what you get, isn't it? So you know he's got the ability. There's no doubt about it. He's got the ability to score big. So yeah. I think that's a great shout as well at his price. One of my ones to watch, and this one might surprise a few people, is Keenan Davis at Villa.
At 4.5.
He's bargain basement, and the reason why, he's played quite a lot of their preseason games. You look at the forwards available to Aston Villa, there's Watkins and Traore, but I think this guy's going to be a bit of an impact sub, and he's got a lot of talent, and he's someone that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, because that may, dependent on what happens with Harry Kane, may mean that I can jettison Iheanacho and bring Harry Kane in and have Davis on the bench. So gives me a bit of an option. So he's someone that I'm going to be watching early part, see what happens with. There's a few Villa players who are subject to transfers. Depending on what happens, he might be someone who suddenly comes in because he can play across that front three, can play in the midfield as well. It might be something that they look to do. And he gets a bit of game time. So he was liked towards the end of last season, highly rated at Villa, and could be someone that I think may get a bit more game time than what says on the tin.
Well, I know last season he was touted as exactly that. He was going to be the impact player, or he was going to be potentially even a starter until they got Ollie Watkins. But obviously Ollie Watkins come in and played really good football, and it sort of put Davis on the outer. But again, I like that shout. If Davis can come on as an impact sub or even earn himself enough that he becomes a starter at 4.5, man, that's absolute bargain.
It just gives you the options, doesn't it, if you want to go big boy with the other two. I mean, I think Tony is someone that I am literally going to put all my eggs in. So that forward, when we do this show, probably game week, I'd imagine you might see that forward line at mine totally change, and I bite the bullet and take the risk. Well, we're talking about biting the bullet. Who are you avoiding in that forward line?
There's someone I'm avoiding in that forward line, and that's Patrick Bamford from Leeds. Now, obviously, like I said, we know Leeds, no F's given. They're just all-out attack. But I think at 8.0, Leeds could come out and have second-year blues for all we know. They might not be that team that we've become accustomed to in Game Week 1. And I think for 8.0, you might as well go and pick a Calvert-Lewin at the same price, who has good fixtures. You know what you're going to get. And I think Bamford, in the championship, I've got a very good friend of mine who's a Leeds fan, and I knew how much he frustrated Leeds fans in the championship with his finishing at times and so on and so forth. And I'm just wondering if last season was just an absolute, he just had a really blue patch season where he finished off really well and played really well. I'm interested to see in this second season if he comes out and produces the same. So for me, at the moment anyways, he's someone I'm avoiding.
He's definitely someone that I agree with you. Second highest forward scorer last year. I think the price increase, it puts him in that category of, do you think he can back it up? And I am 100% with you there. I think it's very overpriced. The guy that I'm looking at as well, he was one of them. The other guy, to have a sake, is a guy that I think might be controversial to some people, but I'd say Harry Kane at 12.5.
He's gone big.
And I know this is going to be controversial, but I just think, you look, they've got a new coach. So firstly, you have no idea how they're going to perform. But I think he is odds on to go to City. And I think that's where my question comes in. Because you look at how City play with their sole striker, Harry Kane is the entire opposite of an Aguero, of an Jesus. He is a different type of striker. And I don't think he's going to get the silver service he's accustomed to at Tottenham, where he's the main man, where you look at how City play, it's a lot more balls in motion. They're looking to cut back inside and do it themselves. I think you'll see a bit of an effect on that. So I think 12.5 until the transfer season is done. At the moment, I think 12.5 presents a huge value, because I will put it on record now. If he goes to City, he won't be the top scoring forward in the league.
Yeah, if he goes to City with the treatment that he's going to get from the guy from like the likes of Sterling and De Bruyne and guys like that, he has serious potential to be the top scorer again, and if not even exceed that, given the attack that City like to play.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I just think a lot of 12.5, you're pretty much relying on him to be your lead striker. And I just don't think for the extra 4 million you're paying, where the other forwards are, I think that 4 million can be saved and split into two very good 8 millions. Yep. Where I just don't, I think 2 8 millions are always going to outscore the 12.5 million outlay for Harry. So I know it's a controversial, but I'll just avoid it. I think it's a huge risk. He did get me out of a lot of trouble in the league last year, though, Harry did. So I hate to turn on him. But for me, a lot of money.
Well, I mean, last season, we know Mourinho, when us being Man United fans, we know what he's all about. He really likes to play for his striker. He likes to get them, in front, central, picking the ball up. He's always, and we saw that last season with Kane. If he wasn't kicking goals, he was assisting, and he was mainly assisting one player in particular, and that was Son. So it'll be interesting to see with Nuno Espirito coming in as the new coach. How's he going to use Kane if he does stay at Tottenham? What's going to happen with Son? What's their attack going to look like? So, yeah, I'm with you there. I think at 12.5, Kane is a bit of a risk at the moment. But if we do find out that he does get transferred to City before the season starts and he's there for game week 1, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you've almost got to pick him immediately.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few as well. You look at the forwards. I mean, like, you've got big Aubameyang at Arsenal. I mean, I think 10 million, that's a lot. Timo Werner as well. I think the forwards is one of them traps that you can fall into with a brand name.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing with Werner is his finishing last season was almost like a worldwide meme. He just really didn't finish off very well, even though he got chances. But the thing is, he got in those positions to be that finisher. And I think if he just fixes that up a little bit, he could be a good pick. But if he's anything like he was last season, I think, at 9 mil, way too much, where you could go an 8 or a 7.5, save that 1 to 1.5 mil and go spend it elsewhere.
Agreed. Now, before we finish up, is there anyone that you're looking at? We haven't discussed the other forward, Jamie Vardy. Now, you're told that Daka's come in, obviously a young, hungry player, very similar to Vardy. How do you see Vardy's year going? Because 10.5 with his return is pretty good value. Do you reckon Vardy's going to slow down?
10.5 for Vardy is always great value, but you know what? I mean, I feel like I've been saying it the last couple of years, but I actually feel like this is the year that he slows down a little bit. I think that's the reason why they bought Daka as well. He's that Vardy replacement, and I don't think Vardy's going to play as much as what we're normally accustomed to. So I do see Vardy slowing down, and that's just might be a controversial call. I don't know, but that's just how I see it. I for 10.5, it's just not someone I'm looking at the moment.
No, I agree with you. He's someone that I've been a bit like you. I've been saying it for the last couple of years. Like, he's slowing down a bit. No way can he keep doing it every week. But yeah, it's got to happen, hasn't it? It has to happen. Happen eventually. That he comes.
He's what? He's what? How old is he now? He's in his 30s at some. Yeah, he's in his 30s. I think he's in his early to mid 30s now. So it's not like his game's very built on being quick and getting out the back, and obviously being that brilliant finisher that he is. Obviously as you start to get older, as we know, you start to lose a bit of spring in your step, and I think it could be hitting that point now for Vardy where that starts happening. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how Leicester goes about it now that they have Daka and Iheanacho, who are much younger, coming in and obviously can provide the same sort of stuff that Vardy can. So it's definitely a wait and see, but at the moment it's not a wait and see that I'm and a risk that I'm willing to take.
And I suppose the final wait and see we'll look at, and this is probably important for us, is a centre-back that we haven't covered yet, and we expect him to sign any time now, and that's Varane at United. Now, we know this guy needs no introduction, 28 years old, he's at the pinnacle of his career. He's won just about everything that there is to win in the world of football. Exceptional passer, great centre-back. What are your thoughts on him? Is he going to be someone that you're going to be looking at? Because we know Ole doesn't really rotate his back four unless he has to. He likes to keep that. He's built on that Ferguson mantra of defence is built by reliability. So is he someone you're looking at?
I think he's definitely someone you're going to look at, and if I'm expecting him to come in at the same price like a Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, and Maguire at 5.5. I think if Maguire's at 5.5, you can almost expect Varane to come in at 5.5, and I think at 5.5 that's huge value, and especially if Manchester United start off really, really well with a lot of clean sheets, and he comes in and is playing a big part of that. You think of like things like interceptions and so on and so forth, like those sort of little stats like that. They all contribute to the FPL's BTS system, which means bonus points. And we know Varane how good he is. With all that happening, he's got huge potential for bonus points as well as clean sheets. Obviously, playing the 90 minutes, I can't see him coming off barring injury or anything like that. So I think if he does come in at 5.5, I think you'll find a lot of potentially even those guys on Luke Shaw potentially moving on to Varane, or even if they do have Luke Shaw, could potentially double up with another Man United player and go with Varane as well. So he's definitely someone I'm looking at.
I think as well, when you look at Van Dijk, you never know how he's going to return after that injury. 6.5 at the moment is old Van Dijk. I mean, if he comes in at the 5.5, that's $1 million you've saved on a guy. When you look points-wise, if you can replicate what he did in La Liga, there's not much difference between them.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously Van Dijk's got that little bit more attacking threat from set pieces, but I mean, Varane is no slouch either. He's also a threat from set pieces and corners and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of return potential there, and I think if he gets off to a very good start, United get off to a very good start as well. I think he's someone you got to get in. It's a no-brainer.
It is as well, and I think as well when you look at that 1 million, if you are a Van Dijk guy, I mean that's, to put that in layman's terms, that's the difference between if you have got Sterling, upgrading him to a Salah for the same points, and if you're more confident in a Salah. I mean, like me particularly, I probably prefer Mohamed Salah at the moment to Sterling. I've done it to fit into my budget. That might be something that you look at as well, that $1 million saved. So I think it's a good shout, and it'll be interesting to see, because it's like your Ben White call as well. Like once it goes through and you see how it's set up, could be a shrewd bit of business.
It definitely is. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see how much FPL decide to put him in the game. I'm expecting him to be 5.5, but no doubt, knowing my luck, he'll come in at 6.5 and make life really difficult. But yeah, that's just what I'm expecting, and we'll see what happens.
I'm with you. If it's 5.5, I think you've got to green light it. I think if it's 6, think about it. And if it's 6.5, always a risk, these foreigners coming into the Premier League. Yeah, you never know.
Especially
5.5.
Especially as centre back, you know, for 6.5, you want attacking returns like assists and so on and so forth. Don't know about Varane if he does that. He's more just the clean sheet sort of looker, potential for bonus points. So it's if he comes in at 6.5, it's a risk you got to personally take yourself. But if he comes in at 5.5, if you even want to double up on United and they start off really well, he could be a really good pick.
He's one of them guys as well that potentially could improve your output. If you have got a Henderson in goal, he is someone that a lot of people have picked up. And if you have got a defender from United, he could have that exponential impact as well, because I think he's going to really, he's a huge upgrade, isn't he, on Lindelof and Eric Bailly.
Without a doubt. Like, I think them two combined wouldn't even be the one player that Varane is. So it's a massive upgrade. You know, he's going to be nailed on week in and week out, barring injury. And I think it's an amazing bit of business by United in real life. And it could just very well easily be an amazing bit of business if you invest in him in FPL if he's at the right price.
Spot on. No, I love it. Well, we'll be back next week to see if anything's changed. I've been Pom, that's Alex, and thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.
Thanks, guys.